Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob Payton here. Today I'm going to be talking about Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is a lot different than Six of Crows, which I've also read by this author. And this is the same author who's Six of Crows, and then I don't know the name of the other series, but they've been compiled into Shadow and Bones on Netflix. And after reading this, I have a feeling this is probably going to be, well, at least I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't become a series pretty soon. This is a dark academia book, which I've kind of started to really like that genre, especially in the way that it plays around with like the occult and horror, more like horror elements. But yeah, I did enjoy this book. I'm gonna say that now. And I feel like I need to get that out of the way because there are gonna be some criticisms incoming. So, Galaxy Alex Stern is the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class. Raised in the Los Angeles hinterlands by a hippie mom, Alex dropped out of school early and into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. In fact, by age 20, she is the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved multiple homicide. Some might say she's thrown her life away, but at her hospital bed, Alex is offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most prestigious universities on a full ride. What's the catch and why her? Still searching for answers, Alex arrives in New Haven, tasked by her mysterious benefactors with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. Their 8 windowless tombs are the well-known haunts of the rich and powerful, from high-ranking politicos to Wall Street's biggest players. But their occult activities are more sinister and more extraordinary than any paranoid imagination might conceive. They tamper with forbidden magic, they raise the dead, and sometimes they prey on the living. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this book. To be fair, this book, and I did not know this going in, this is essentially just a murder mystery book. Think some of the earlier Harry Dresden novels, right? Someone died, they think magic is involved, and Alex, because her house is Lethe, she gets tasked into kind of figuring out if this is going to damage the school. It really does seem that the job of the Lethe house is less really figuring out who's behind certain crimes and more or less making sure that the 8 houses are protected or, you know, not openly accused. And this does play out a lot in the book, and you can see that she does kind of resent this at times because, like, when she's talking about the different actions and activities of these 8 houses, which are secret societies, which essentially seem to operate like frat houses with magic on occasion, it is pretty clear that she does not like it, mostly because she constantly compares her own upbringing to the upbringing that a lot of these people have, even though it does kind of come out that she is not the only scholarship kid there. She is tapped to attend Yale based on the fact that she can see ghosts, which they call grays, which it is made clear that it's a pretty rare ability and one that most of the other houses can't do unless they do some sort of magic. And magic in this world is pretty interesting in that it seems like it's much less based on actual, like, ability, and it's more focused on getting the right herbs and sacrifices and stuff like that. Like, for divination, they cut people open and stuff like that. So, that being said, it was kind of weird. I guess maybe I didn't understand very well why the 8 houses were so important and why the tombs themselves were so important. Because that's a big focal point of the story, is that they all have to do magic at Yale because the tombs are focal points of power, and that, but it does make it clear that there are lesser houses scattered throughout the US and wherever, and people that practice magic in other places, but for whatever reason it seems to work better in New Haven. And these houses choose various people throughout Yale to join them because it, for some whatever reason, as you get older, your magical ability, if you have any, seems to, I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but it it disappears over time, or at least isn't as potent as time goes on. So in this way, older rich people are kind of feeding on younger rich people to make them do, you know, sometimes terrible magical rituals, such as cutting people open for stock prices and stuff like that, even though they stitch them up at the end of the day. One of the reasons, or one of the things House Lethe has to protect against, and they actually have a rule which becomes an acronym, which I don't remember right now, but it essentially stands for No More Dead Hobos, because back in the day, they used to just kill hobos as part of these rituals. And while I did think that was interesting, I guess I didn't really understand why, and it wasn't made clear. There is a lot of information dumping in this book, so, you know, you can skim over it. Or if you're someone that just loves lots of information given to you at once, you know, there is a lot of it in this book. It isn't really made clear why anyone can't do magic, besides like some vague correlation of ley lines, and then people like Alex who are born to be able to see grays, but people like Darlington, who is another main character, you know, it isn't really made clear. I mean, he starts dabbling by himself before he comes to Yale. So it's really just, I guess, not made clear why only certain people can do magic. Whereas it seems like anyone with the right herbs and can figure out the equipment could potentially figure out how to do a lot of this stuff. But that was just my take. And I guess some parts of the magic system I also didn't understand, because some of it seems to happen with them quoting old poems. And I guess it's more the intent behind the quotes. But then, like I said, other parts are heavily influenced by having all the right ritual equipment. And I just kind of thought that was interesting. I am going to read the second book to see if maybe there is some more detail given to that magic system, because I like systems of magic in books that aren't, you know, as a fan of Harry Dresden, I don't always want wizards throwing fireballs out of their hands. Sometimes it's nice to have magic be this subtle but scary thing that not everyone truly understands, which it kind of does come across a bit in this book. You know, they talk about how different rituals leave people, you know, nauseous and give them a sense of vertigo and stuff like that. Like, it messes with people's heads, it messes with their sense of reality, and that's kind of how it should be. And I did really enjoy that. Alex as a character is a little hit and miss at times. She comes across sometimes as trying to be too edgy, but without a lot of depth to back that up. She does have a tragic backstory. She drops out of high school. She gets involved with drugs and stuff, mostly because she doesn't want to be able to see ghosts. And it's really impacted her life. She falls in with the wrong crowd. There's a tragic event, and then she is offered the chance to come to this school. And all of that is very interesting. I was kind of able to get into her character a little bit as someone that went to college later in life. I understand what it kind of can feel like to be an outsider on a campus. Not to the extent of which she felt. I'll be honest, there's a lot of romanticizing Yale and Ivy League schools in this book. That is one thing that I see a lot in dark academia type books. It's a lot of romanticizing how hard it was, or how hard it could be for different people to get into different prestigious schools. As someone who didn't grow up like that, it just doesn't do anything for me. I know a lot of people are very into their alma maters and talk later in life all the time about what college they attended and stuff like that. You know, as someone that comes from an area where a lot of people aren't college educated and it's not that big of a thing, it just doesn't do it for me in the way that, you know, I guess it does for other people. So that was something. So like the long, you know, paragraphs and stuff describing Yale and this of Yale and that of Yale, I'm like, I could care less. You know, and that's just me. I come from a place where college education only works if you get a job afterwards, if that makes sense. And that's probably not a hot take for a lot of people. It's just the idea of Ivy League prestigious schools that cost bucket loads of money every year has never been something that I romanticized. So it does get romanticized a lot in this book, and it just doesn't really do a whole lot for me. One thing that I did find really interesting and I think was done really well is that when the book does turn into a murder investigation and Alex starts to, investigate the murder and has to talk to other students, it comes across as them being very flippant. And she kind of blames this on the fact that a lot of them, come from very wealthy backgrounds. But as someone that, also went to college later in life and kind of felt like an outsider, I would almost disagree in the fact that it's more because a lot of people go the route of directly from high school into college, so the consequences aren't always there. Like, we've probably all did a lot of stupid stuff in high school that we could not imagine that we would do once we started paying taxes on a regular basis, or at least probably shouldn't. And so that's kind of how I thought about it. It was more, when she's talking like, oh yeah, they're behaving this way because they're kids, and they're also rich kids. So they've been very insulated against any bad things happening. So when it does become clear that the murder is somehow linked to Yale, and not only just Yale, but maybe one of the houses in particular, and everyone doesn't seem to take it that seriously, I did not find that as wildly out of the ordinary as I think it was supposed to be. Like, oh, these guys. I'm like, I don't know if you've talked to many college kids lately, but it's going to be hard to move the needle there. Now, that being said, that's most of the negatives, I think. And some of the positives, too. I did like this book. It did kind of feel weird that it took a while for it to actually get in the murder mystery. And there also is a lot of time hopping. And one of the things I did not enjoy about the time hopping is the fact that between the winter and fall and stuff, where Alex is, she joins the school and then ends up later investigating this murder mystery, she feels like two very different people. And I don't think we were given enough nuance into why that is, right? There's nothing that happens. There is like a tragic thing that does happen between these two timelines, but not to the extent that all of a sudden, she feels comfortable basically running across campus and running through these houses like a bull in a china shop. Or bad-mouthing police officers to their face and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of things where it seems like it's like almost like a light switch moment where that switch is thrown, and now she's like, well, I've got magic and I don't care and I'll do whatever I want. And I guess we just don't really see that character progression as much as I feel that maybe we should have by the time we got to the investigation. But that's just me. Well, I take that back. It's not just me. I have seen other reviews where they talked about that a little bit too. But to be fair, this is a big book and it is very fast-paced. So I could imagine that the author probably just wanted to stay on the action, which is someone that likes more pulp-ish books. As I've talked about on this, they tend to be more action-oriented and fast-paced. I did enjoy the progression of the story, especially when we get past a lot of the info dumping. It does move very quickly, plotline to plotline. We do get a lot of her backstory, which is very tragic. But at the same time, I do kind of wish that we had maybe gotten a little more of that in the beginning. And that way, all of the flashbacks, once the murder investigation started, would somehow be focused on the investigation. There is also a tragic event that happens within House Leth, and that it does kind of tie in later in the book what happened and why it happened. And I do understand why it's left unresolved, because it is going to be the focal point of the sequel. I do just kind of wish we'd gotten that tied up a little bit more. But other than that, I did enjoy this book. If you are looking for a dark academia book set in the real world, this is set in Yale during our time. And apparently, I'm not, like I said, I don't know a whole lot about Ivy League schools, but according to other reviews and stuff I saw on the internet, and I guess people were even quoting interviews with the author, a lot of the things that are talked about in Yale and in New Haven, they do actually all exist. So this is very, very, very grounded in the real world. And you want maybe a more realistic magic system, but one that is also very dark and very terrifying. I would say go ahead and give this book a try. I did enjoy this book. Like I said, a lot of the things that I had that I didn't like, or maybe not didn't like, but kind of wish was done in a different way, they're very minor, I feel like, to the rest of the story. Because like I said, this is a big book, but once it takes off, it is very fast paced. I would say push through a lot of the info dumping in the beginning. I would even say feel free, if you really don't care about what is kind of a tour of Yale, skim it and just get to the meat of the story. A lot of it, I'm not a map person. The way I read is I visualize where the character's at and their actions as it's happening, in a way. So when, fantasy books of any sort, or even science fiction books, they give these big maps, I don't know where things in our relation to each other. I can't keep that in my head. My brain doesn't work that way. So I skim a lot of that kind of stuff. And that's just me. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's the way I do it. But either way, I like this book. It was fun. It was a good dark academia book, I guess. Like I said, I haven't read that many dark academia books. I am kind of getting into them, mostly because I like the ideas of the settings. And I'm definitely going to read the sequel. I don't know if I'll review it on the channel. I probably will, but it might be a while, because this is a pretty big book. I think this comes in at like 500 and some pages, and I have a whole bunch of books to review and even more to read. So I don't want to make any promises that I might not be able to keep this year, but I will review it at some point after I read it. And if you've read Ninth House and you liked it, you didn't like it, feel free to let me know in the comments below. If you know any other dark academia books you think I should check out that are kind of in the same vein and a lot more horror focused, or maybe even like mystery focused, let me know in the comments too. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.